The old pickup truck rattled down a deserted dirt road, kicking up a cloud of red dust. Inside, a 17-year-old girl named Lily stared silently out the window. The vast, empty landscape mirrored the loneliness in her heart. Her father had passed away a year ago, and since then, her stepmother's cruelty had only grown. Her stepmother, a sharp-faced woman named Barbara, gripped the steering wheel tightly. "I'm done feeding you and putting a roof over your head," Barbara snapped, not looking at Lily. "You're not my blood. It's time you learn to fend for yourself." Lily's eyes welled with tears, but she refused to let them fall. "I can work. I'll get a job in town," she pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. Barbara just let out a cold, harsh laugh. The truck suddenly swerved to a violent stop on the side of the trail. "Get out," Barbara commanded, her voice like ice. When Lily didn't move fast enough, Barbara reached across her, shoved the door open, and pushed her out onto the hard ground. Lily's small duffel bag was thrown out after her, landing with a thud. "Please, don't leave me here," Lily cried, scrambling to her feet. Barbara's face was a mask of cold determination. "No one will miss you," she said flatly. Then she slammed the door, turned the truck around, and sped off, leaving Lily in a choking cloud of dust and silence. Lily stood frozen, watching the truck disappear into the horizon. The reality of her situation crashed down on her. She was utterly alone, miles from the nearest town, with only the clothes on her back and a single bottle of water in her bag. The sun beat down relentlessly. Lily didn't know how long she had been walking. Her throat was parched, and her feet ached. The vastness of the wilderness was overwhelming. Every direction looked the same, barren, hot, and hopeless. She stumbled over a rock and fell to her knees, tears of frustration and fear finally breaking through. Miles away, a man named Cole was riding the fence line of his property, the Double C Ranch. He was in his late 30s, with a quiet intensity and eyes that had seen too much pain. He preferred the company of his horses to people. From a high ridge, a glint of movement caught his sharp eye. He reined in his powerful quarter horse, Duke, and squinted against the sun. Far below, a small figure was stumbling through the scrubland. A trespasser was his first thought, his guard immediately going up. But something about the way the person moved, weak, disoriented, made him pause. Lily heard the sound of hoofbeats and looked up, her heart hammering against her ribs. A man on a large, imposing horse was riding toward her. Fear seized her. He was big, dressed in worn jeans and a dusty hat, his face shadowed and unreadable. She was too exhausted to run. Cole brought Duke to a stop a few feet from her. He looked down at the terrified, dusty girl. She was young, too young to be out here alone. "You're on private land," he said, his voice a low, gravelly rumble. It wasn't a greeting, it was a statement of fact. Lily looked up, her wide, fearful eyes meeting his. She tried to speak, but only a dry, cracked whisper came out. She left me." Those 3 words, filled with a raw, undeniable truth, struck something deep within Cole. He saw no guile in her face, only sheer, unadulterated terror. Cole dismounted, his movements calm and deliberate so as not to spook her further. He pulled a canteen from his saddlebag and held it out. Lily stared at it for a moment before snatching it and drinking greedily. "Slowly," he instructed, his voice softer now. "Who left you?" he asked, though he could already guess the story. Lily hugged herself, shivering despite the heat. "My stepmother. She said I was a burden." The words were laced with a shame that made Cole's jaw tighten. He saw the faint bruise on her arm from where Barbara had grabbed her. He looked at the setting sun. The temperature would plummet soon, and coyotes roamed these hills at night. Leaving her here was a death sentence. Every instinct that had built his fortress of solitude told him to put her back on his horse and take her to the sheriff in the morning. "Come on," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. He offered her a hand up onto Duke. She was light as a feather. She settled behind the saddle, holding nervously onto the cantle to keep from touching him. As Duke moved, she instinctively leaned forward, her hands briefly gripping his waist for balance. A jolt, subtle but undeniable, passed through Cole. It was the first time a woman had touched him in years. He stiffened for a second, then forced himself to relax. He could feel the slight tremor in her hands. She was just a scared kid, he told himself. But she didn't feel like a kid. She felt like a wounded bird, and an old, protective instinct he thought was dead began to stir. They rode in silence up to a sprawling ranch house. It was beautifully built but felt strangely empty, like a museum. No lights were on. No welcoming smoke came from the chimney. Cole helped her down, his hands firm but gentle on her waist. He led her inside. The interior was immaculate, all dark wood and leather, but it was cold. There were no family photos on the walls, no cozy blankets on the chairs. It was a house, not a home. "You can use the guest room," he said, pointing down a hall. "Bathrooms through there." Later, cleaned up and wearing an old t-shirt of his that swam on her, Lily found him in the massive kitchen. He was staring into the refrigerator as if he'd forgotten what he was looking for. It was nearly empty. "You don't have much food," she said softly. Cole glanced at her, clean-faced now, her youth and vulnerability even more apparent. "I eat in town," he mumbled. It was a lie. He often forgot to eat. Lily, feeling a need to be useful, found a box of pasta and a jar of sauce. "I can make dinner," she offered. He just nodded, watching as she moved around his kitchen with a quiet competence that suddenly made the empty house feel less hollow. As they ate the simple meal in silence, the strangeness of the situation settled over them. A wealthy, reclusive rancher and an abandoned teenager, sharing a table under the glow of a single kitchen light. The outside world felt very far away. For the first time in a long time, Cole didn't feel entirely alone, and for the first time since her father died, Lily felt a flicker of safety. The next morning, Lily woke up in the strange, quiet house. For a moment, she didn't know where she was. The bed was soft, and the room was warm. Then she remembered the cowboy, Cole, and the long, silent ride to the ranch. She got dressed and walked cautiously into the kitchen. Cole was already there, drinking a cup of black coffee. He looked like he hadn't slept much. He glanced at her, but didn't say anything. The silence was awkward. Lily felt like she was in the way. "I can make breakfast," she offered, wanting to be useful. He just shrugged. "Suit yourself." Lily found eggs and bread. She scrambled the eggs and made toast. The simple act of cooking in someone else's kitchen felt strangely intimate. She placed a plate in front of him. He stared at it for a long moment before taking a bite. "It's good," he said, his voice quiet. It was the first nice thing anyone had said to her in a long time. A small, warm feeling spread in her chest. After breakfast, he stood up. "I have work to do," he said. He hesitated at the door. "You can stay inside. Or you can watch. Just don't get in the way." Lily chose to watch from the porch. She saw him working with a young, skittish horse in the corral. He wasn't rough or loud. He was patient and calm. His hands were gentle on the reins. She saw a different side of him, not the stern rescuer, but a man who understood creatures that were afraid. Days turned into a week. Lily stayed in the guest room. Cole was gone most of the day, but he started coming back for the meals she cooked. The house felt less empty with the smell of food in the air. They ate together in silence, but it was a more comfortable silence now. One afternoon, Lily gathered her courage and walked out to the barn. Cole was mending a saddle. "Can I help?" she asked. He looked surprised but handed her a clean rag. "You can oil the leather," he said, showing her how. They worked side by side without talking. He started teaching her small things. How to feed the horses without getting kicked. How to check the water troughs. She was a quick learner, and he was a good teacher. He didn't use many words, but his instructions were clear and patient. During one of these lessons, her hand brushed against his as she reached for a tool. They both pulled back quickly. A faint pink blush crept up Lily's neck. Cole cleared his throat and looked away, but he didn't move from her side. A new, quiet understanding began to grow between them. A sudden summer storm rolled in, fierce and loud. The wind howled, and rain lashed against the windows. The power in the house flickered and went out, plunging them into darkness. Lily, who had been reading in the living room, let out a small gasp. Cole came in from the kitchen, holding a flashlight. "It's just a storm. The generator will kick on," he said. But he saw she was shivering. He lit a fire in the big stone fireplace he never used. The orange glow filled the room, pushing back the dark. They sat on the rug in front of the fire, listening to the rain. For the first time, Cole started to talk. He didn't look at her, but stared into the flames. "I inherited this ranch from my parents," he said. "Lived here my whole life." His voice was low. He didn't share his deep secrets, but he shared pieces of his life. He talked about the land, the cattle, the pride of building something. Lily listened, mesmerized. The storm outside raged, but inside by the fire, it felt safe and warm. It was a turning point. Lily was cleaning the living room, trying to make herself useful, when she found it. Tucked away on a high shelf was a single, dusty photograph in a silver frame. It showed a younger, happier Cole with his arm around a beautiful, smiling woman. Cole walked in and froze when he saw what she was holding. His face went pale and tight. "Put that down," he said, his voice harsh and sharp. Lily flinched and quickly put it back, her heart pounding. She had never seen him look so angry or so hurt. "I'm sorry," she whispered. The warmth of the previous night was gone. He took a deep breath, his shoulders slumping. "Her name was Sarah," he said quietly. "She's gone." That was all he said before turning and walking out of the house, leaving Lily alone with a new understanding of his loneliness. Cole needed supplies. "You'll need to come," he told Lily. "You can't stay here alone." He was being practical, but she felt a thrill at the idea of going somewhere with him. He bought her a new pair of jeans and a shirt, his way of caring without using words. In the small-town general store, people stared. They whispered about the reclusive Cole Blackwood and the young girl living with him. Lily felt their eyes on her and moved closer to Cole without thinking. He subtly shifted, placing his body between her and the staring crowd, a silent, protective gesture. On the drive back, they stopped at a scenic overlook. The view of his ranch from the hill was breathtaking. "It's so beautiful," Lily said, her voice full of wonder. Cole looked at her, at the way the sunset lit up her face, and then at his land. For the first time in years, he saw the beauty she saw. "Yeah," he said, his voice soft. "It is." While helping stack hay bales in the barn, a splinter of wood dug deep into Lily's palm. She cried out in pain. Cole was at her side in an instant. "Let me see," he said, his voice urgent. He gently took her hand in his. His hands, usually so rough and capable, were incredibly gentle as he used tweezers to remove the splinter. She winced, and he instinctively blew softly on the wound to soothe it, just as he would for a frightened horse. The simple, caring act made her heart ache. He looked up from her hand and found her looking at him. Their eyes locked. The air in the barn grew still and thick. He was still holding her hand. She could feel the rough calluses on his fingers. He leaned in just a fraction, and she held her breath. But then he let go and stepped back, breaking the spell. "You should put a bandage on that," he said, his voice rough, before turning away. Cole drove into town for a parts delivery. While he was gone, a familiar car pulled up to the ranch house. It was Barbara, Lily's stepmother. Her greedy eyes scanned the wealthy property. "I made a mistake, Lily," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "I've come to take you home." Lily stood her ground on the porch. "I am home," she said, her voice stronger than it had ever been. Barbara's fake smile vanished. "You're a minor. You'll do as I say, or I'll go to the sheriff and tell him that rich rancher kidnapped you." Just then, Cole's truck rumbled up the driveway. He got out, his presence immediately changing the atmosphere. He walked straight to the porch and stood beside Lily. "You need to leave," he told Barbara, his voice low and dangerous. "She stays." After Barbara left, spitting threats, Cole knew she would be back. He knew how the world worked. He turned to Lily, his face serious. "There's a way to make sure she can never take you away," he said. He took a deep breath. "Marry me." Lily's eyes went wide with shock. "It wouldn't be a real marriage," he quickly added. "Not like that. It would be on paper only. To protect you. To give you legal rights to be here." Lily's mind raced. It was crazy. He was so much older. But she looked at this man who had saved her, sheltered her, and quietly cared for her. She thought of the cold, unloving home she'd left. She thought of the warmth she felt here with him. "Okay," she whispered. "Yes." They went to the courthouse a few days later. Lily wore a simple, pretty yellow dress they bought in town. Cole wore a clean, new shirt. The ceremony was quick and legal. They signed the papers. The judge said, "You may kiss the bride." An awkward silence hung in the air. Cole looked at Lily, his new wife. She looked up at him, her young face full of a confusing mix of hope and fear. He leaned down and gently, ever so softly, brushed his lips against her forehead. It was a kiss of promise and protection, not passion, but it sent a shiver through them both. That night, they slept in separate rooms, as always. But the piece of paper in the desk drawer changed everything. Lily lay in bed, touching the spot on her forehead. Cole stared at the ceiling, the ghost of the feel of her skin against his lips, keeping him awake. True to her word, Barbara returned with a sheriff's deputy. She pointed at Cole. "That's him. He's holding my daughter against her will." The deputy, a man who knew Cole, looked skeptical. Cole remained calm. He simply went inside and returned with the marriage certificate. Barbara's face turned purple with rage. "This is a trick. She's just a girl," she screamed. Lily stepped forward. "I am his wife," she said, her voice clear and strong for the deputy to hear. "And this is my home. I want you to leave and never come back." Defeated and humiliated, Barbara was led away by the deputy. The threat was over. As the cars drove away, Lily let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. She turned to Cole. The fight was won, but a new, uncertain future was just beginning. Weeks passed. The formality of their marriage settled into a new rhythm. The house was now fully a home, filled with Lily's presence. One evening, Cole came inside to find her curled on the sofa asleep. A book was resting on her chest. He didn't wake her. Instead, he carefully took the blanket from the back of the couch and draped it over her. He stood there for a long time, just watching her sleep. She looked peaceful. She looked like she belonged. He realized then that he wasn't protecting her out of duty anymore. He wasn't just providing shelter. He was in love with his wife. He bent down and this time pressed a soft, real kiss to her lips. Lily's eyes fluttered open. She smiled a slow, happy smile. She reached up and touched his face. "I love you, Cole," she whispered. He finally said the words back, his voice thick with emotion. "I love you, Lily." The lonely ranch was lonely no more.